GM, welcome to another Touchgrass podcast episode. It's been a while since we had a Hyperliquid project on. This one's been making the headlines all across. Parker, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Um, Parker, I think we'll talk a lot more about, Perps Fun. We'll talk about Aura Money and the association. I do want to congratulate you on all the noise that was made on crypto Twitter during the pre-launch announcement. The number one question I had was, why was White Rhino showed in the video? Like, what's sort of there?
It's a good question. It was intentionally ridiculous. Like obviously you can't
Yeah.
really make a market around that. But the whole goal was just to get people's imagination going. Like we've just kind of been memeing this you can just launch things line. And yeah, we're just trying to inspire creativity.
Yeah. How's the response been from the Hyperliquid community?
Amazing. It's been really satisfying because we've been building this kind of quietly for months now, conceptually, and then via partnerships and whatnot. So getting it out there felt great, and we've had like over 50 applications so far. So that's been really cool to see too.
Awesome. Let's sort of deep dive into like the mechanics here. Like, I think the first question I had when I looked at this was what's sort of the relationship between Aura Money and Perps Fun? Maybe also helpful for our listeners to get a little bit of background on you and the team. Sort of walk us through like the evolution, what you've been up to, what's Aura Money, and then how did we get here to Perps Fun?
Yeah, for sure. I've been in the space for 5 or 6 years now. Originally had a growth agency, dropped out of high school, founded a growth agency, and that was kind of my means of getting my foot in the door and working alongside some cool founders and a wide array of products. Eventually felt ready to grow equity somewhere, so I joined the founding team of Smiley, which was an on-chain options protocol. That ended in an acqui-hire to another L1. And then my co-founder and I, yeah, we just had this thesis that all capital markets would come on chain. It seems like super obvious now, but um, and then there was an opportunity to build like a consumer wrapper for all that. So we started on Aura Money, which yeah is essentially a trading terminal for all on-chain markets. So it's iOS, Android, desktop web app. It's market agnostic. So the goal there is just to serve everything, and let the trader, let the consumer decide what they want to do. But naturally, when you start building down that path, you get like interested in the whole asset creation part of the stack. When HIP-3 was announced, we had some ambitions to launch our own HIP-3 DEX. We hired Justin. Justin joined the team. He's an ex-quant and trader from Jump Crypto. And we were kind of eyeing some interesting RWA markets, particularly treasuries. But yeah, we quickly faced, the set of problems that all potential HIP-3 deployers are faced with, especially the big price tag. Um, and we, kind of organically arrived at this concept of Perps.fun. So, like in a nutshell, it is all one company. It's just the full life cycle of assets like emerging and then being traded. So, Perps.fun is where they're created, and Or.money is where they're traded.
That makes sense. And can you talk a little bit about the mechanics, sir? The article covered it pretty in depth, but just for our audience who hasn't probably gone through the article, like how does this work?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, to launch a HIP-3 DEX, you got to garner 500,000 hype to safeguard the protocol. So we partnered with Kinetiq. They have a permissionless platform it's called Launch Platform. We're going to be the first one there. So they essentially create an LST for us. So instead of K hype, it's KP hype. Anybody can deposit into that. Once we meet the minimum threshold of 500,000, we're able to go live. There will be a maximum of 750,000 to avoid dilution for stakers. And then, yeah, like beyond that, it depends on where we're at in the go-to-market, life cycle. For example, to start, we're really focused on the first 10 launches, just highly curated. It'll be very permissioned. and then over time, we have some ideas in mind to trend towards a more permissionless mechanism. There will always be some level of permission involved, but nevertheless, kind of trend in that direction. But happy to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, I think I wanted to understand like a lot of are building on top of Hyperliquid and then launching new markets. Is your goal to kind of explore ones that are not live yet, something more exotic that, like you said, treasuries are something that are not live in most venues? Are those the kind of markets you want where you have that first kind of advantage where you're the first venue to offer that, or you're going for the known names that have the most liquidity and stuff like that?
No, definitely the former. So the way we kind of look at it is, and you may have seen, there's, I don't know, a dozen different HIP-3 projects announced, but weren't able to get to market. And as I mentioned, we have like 50 applications, 50 plus applications. So there's this whole, list of more like long tail markets that would like to come to market. We've seen some demand for various categories, but the market, it's not going to underwrite each experiment for $15 million at a time, right? It just doesn't make sense to take this novel idea and it's like, oh, maybe you can get one, two, three, maybe four perps contracts out of this, category, and then underwrite that with $15 million, lock up that capital, some hopefully generate some meaningful amount of yield on that. It's just putting aside all the different operational costs that are associated to manage something like that with Oracle infrastructure, team, you name it. So our goal is definitely to explore the more long tail outcomes that wouldn't otherwise be possible.
That makes
So
sense.
say that these are at markets, like for example on Poly Market, there are so many of these long tail stuff that people are interested in, but they just can't. It's very illiquid and you can't get in and out. It's not really, user friendly for someone who's trying it out for the first time. Do you think that user will have a better experience on Perps.fun because the instrument is completely different?
Depends. It really depends on the market. Like, I think perps are better suited for some things. Maybe outcome-based markets are better suited for others. It's apples to oranges.
That makes sense. And then Parker, do you want to talk a little bit about the relationship with Kinetiq here? Like, how did this idea come about? Like, what did they approach you guys? Was this more of an outbound thing? What's the thought process behind working with Kinetiq here? Like, there are other LSTs in the Hyperliquid ecosystem. Talk to us about that relationship and their role and how this came about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was outbound to start. I mean, we were talking to anybody and everybody that had some amount of hype, and just weighing all the different options to get to market. Whether that was going the LST route, whether that was getting a deal with a liquid fund and throwing it into a multi-sig. Like we considered everything. Um, but ultimately, we decided to go with Kinetiq because we shared our vision for Perps.fun. They got it immediately, and yeah, the incentives just aligned really well because they ultimately have a stake in Perps.fun as the infrastructure provider, and everyone is familiar with what Markets.xyz is doing. So we think that between the two, they just kind of round each other out really well. And yeah, ultimately they're the biggest LSD in Hyperliquid, right? So who better to partner with?
Yeah. And is there like a relationship between the amount staked and the number of perp markets you can launch? Like, is that like if for 500K you can only do a few, but then you need more stake to do more? Like, how does that relationship work?
Yeah, it's a good question. People ask it all the time. The short answer is infinite. Once you have you know, uh, the amount needed, you're free to launch as many markets as you can acquire tickers, essentially.
So, is there like a relationship between like the amount staked? Like what I read from the article was 50% of the revenue generated from a perp market goes back to stakers. Does that mean as more stakers increase the yield dilutes as well? Like, have you thought about those dynamics?
Yeah, so this is something that Kinetiq thought about from the start of designing launch platform. So basically, there's a minimum of 500,000, right, just to keep the lights on, but a maximum of 750,000, so that yield doesn't overly dilute. Um, but just to go over the economics on Perps Fund, so obviously 50% of any HIP-3 market goes to Hyperliquid. The other 50% goes to the deployer. Of that 50%, 50% goes to the sub-deployer, in our case. And then the remaining 50% is split between us, our stakers, and infrastructure providers.
Got it. I think you mentioned this before and talked about permission versus permissionless. How does it currently work for someone to come in, a third party to come and launch their own markets? What's that process like? If someone is coming, like some TradeFi person or someone they were really interested, see the opportunity. What does the process look like right now?
Yeah, the process today looks like you just go to perps.fun. There's an application form. It just asks for some basic information around like, what describe the market, maybe any information about the team, um, uh, everything we can gather, because sometimes these are established projects that already have live products or liquidity partners, or lack thereof. From there, we just take it into Telegram, hop on a call, kind of flesh out, the design a bit, and then ultimately we have, an in-house risk team, particularly Justin, um, where we kind of, flesh out exactly what the Oracle may look like, the Oracle implementation, and then take it to our partners at SETA.
Is there any like maths or like what sort of goes through Justin's mind? Like, what are the parameters of deciding, okay, this is going to be a market that we're really interested in? Is that more of a market opportunity thing where you think more on GTM, or is that more of a quant thing where it's like this market is feasible long term?
Yes, it's a great question. It's a bit of everything, to be honest. So as a team, we kind of assess like, okay, is there any like validated demand for this? Whether it's externally from like taker flow or we'll talk to market makers and ask, is this something that you guys could service or be interested? Yes or no? And then yes, there is a definitely like a quantitative component there, where it's like, where's the data coming from? How robust is it? What kind of computation do we need to add, if any, for off-market hours or periods where there may be some stale pricing data? And how do we overcome that? And yeah,
What are some markets that you are excited to see go live?
yeah. Um, there's only so much I can say about that now. We we have some markets we're really excited to launch ourselves. All I will say is that they were really, really popular at one point in DeFi's history, but we lost them. So we want to bring them back. Um, I think there was another recent potential deployer. I don't want to say their name, but they definitely proved out some demand for a particular category. So we think that could be exciting. And then we've had some people reach out, particular market makers, um, that want to bring some niche equity markets to Hyperliquid, um, that seem really interesting. And then some, really long tail kind of, macro indicators or, uh, yeah, very interesting like data you could potentially turn into a perp.
As a follow-up to that, right? So when we saw these kinds of new markets go live, we saw the equities go live, we saw commodities go live. There was this kind of shift for crypto traders that could have made that easy switch of, crypto is kind of dry right now, there's not enough liquidity, let's go and trade these equities on Hyperliquid. Do you think the same demographic or same group of people will also trade these long tail, or there'll be like a new group of traders, or that's not even in crypto? So who do you think primarily will kind of shift over to trade some of these long tail markets? Do you think it's just the same natives, or a new group will come out?
Are you referring to the deployers or the traders?
The traders, like for example,
Okay.
the ones who were trading on Hyperliquid first, only crypto, they went in,
Mhm,
they were trading gold, silver, equities. Do you think those
mhm.
same people will come and trade these long tail markets, or is it just going to be some new group of people?
I think both. Um, yeah, absolutely both. I mean, the lowest hanging fruit is definitely the existing, you know, demand and takers on hypercore today. That said, I think these long tail markets are really uniquely positioned for anybody who is good at content creation. Um, there's the more applications we get, I have a sense like, okay, this one will do really well on TikTok and Instagram. This one will do really well on TikTok and Instagram. Um, I even had this like light bulb moment uh, many months ago at this point. I was just doom scrolling Instagram for a minute, and a Ventures video came up on my feed, and I had to take a step back. I was like, wait, what? Like, I'm not on CT. What am I seeing? And yeah, it was just this like typical, uh, you know, like very kind of viral style content where oh, you can now trade SpaceX with 20x leverage or whatever. So I think there's a pretty big handful of concepts that would do really, really well in those like normie demographics.
So, for example, let's say I heard recently, like this, even though I don't really like him, but clavicular guy, he's going super viral, and everyone's like, as a creator, everyone's like, I knew this guy was gonna blow up. If I could have only traded this attention, I could have made a lot of money. Is that something, or are you also seeing those kinds of applications?
Yeah, we're really getting anything and everything. Again, like there are some, realistic limitations for creating a perp market versus something like a meme coin, a spot market. Um, that has more to do with the quantitative side of things, for sure. But nevertheless, we're here to push those bounds. And explore like what's realistically possible, while upholding like the maximum amount of safety that we possibly can.
And Parker, like when you think about like the sub deployer, I think one thing that like if you look at the meme coin trenches, aping into the right meme coin is extremely difficult. Like if you think about it, like you need to be on the right chain, then you need to have the right contract address, then like you need to time it correctly. Have you thought about like this like the authenticity of the sub deployer? Like how do you make sure as the platform that there will be no copycats? This is like the right deployer. Is there any thought process there? Like, are there any guidelines that you've thought about?
Yeah, yeah. We have a couple thoughts here. First of all, we'll just kind of approach everything case by case. And for example, there could be an existing market that's really niche, not doing a ton of volume. Another sub deployer comes along wanting to deploy the same thing. We'll most likely tell them no unless um, they, they've done, they have more resources externally. So maybe they have they have more reach on socials or in a certain demographic. Maybe they have better liquidity partners. Um, we want to find a balance between, you know, uh, avoiding like dilution and I don't know, like stepping on each other's toes, but also having some free market dynamics and competition so that ultimately consumers get a better product.
Does that create the opportunity for a secondary market to acquire original deployers?
That's a great question. I have to think about if that could even how that could even work.
So I'll tell you, like one of the theses that I've had, especially with prediction markets, is we've been seeing a lot of these prediction markets pop up where it's like a deploy your own prediction market. I think the
Yeah.
way that the ref link model has worked, like historically, a sports bettor can only link to a sports betting website and earn a ref link. historically a trader can only link to, a reflink program with a perp dex and get reflinks. I think as more custom markets pop up where you can create your own market, a content creator or someone with reach is just going to double down on their own reach, and they would want a bigger part of the pie. So, like I've been giving this example a lot, like Gainsey, the amount of, shilling he's been doing, the amount of live streams he's been doing, he probably would make a lot more money launching his own markets rather than, having a ref link associated. Is that also a thought process there? Like you want more content creators to launch perps?
Yeah, because we think about like sometimes we think about what are the roles of the sub deployer, right? If we're covering the stake side of things, the ongoing risk management, handhold the whole Oracle implementation side of things, and plus the cost of operating the Oracle comes out of our side of the agreement with our partnership with SATA. So what like is the role of the sub deployer, right? Well, there's really two. Um, there's one, brand and reach. So the more attention and demand they can generate to trade that product, the better. And two, the more I don't know, I suppose BD savvy they are to attract good liquidity partners on the market making side of things. Um, so I think the attention part is a big one because we like as a platform. I think it's true for any like platform. They're able to generate a good amount of network effects themselves, and in many cases, it will overshadow most sub deployments per se. But nevertheless, like they often have their moments, and they kind of really shift, the overall outcome. So I mean, that's when we're having conversations with sub deployers, like we're telling them explicitly, what we think that the role is for them, and what we think would make the most, successful outcome. But back to your question around like secondaries, we have entertained some ideas around tokenizing the fee ownership of the deployments. There's like one reason is what you mentioned. The other could be around crowdfunding for tickers and whatnot. So similar, it would essentially result in somewhat of a bonding phase, like you see on Pump.fun, where maybe it goes through the permissioned process on our end of actually validating the market from a quantitative standpoint, from maybe a bit of a qualitative standpoint, but the qualitative would then largely get passed on to community. Like, are you willing to fund this to purchase a ticker or not? And that acts as a natural free market, filter, and then also gives the community a way to participate in that market discovery versus the price discovery you see on Pump.fun.
Yeah. Maybe that's like a good way for ecosystems to also like give community a stake in their purpose market. Which sort of leads me to my next question. Like, of course, the exotic markets are interesting, but when HIP-3 was initially introduced, the entire thing was, hey, any ecosystem with an upcoming TGE is going to really want to do this for, quote unquote reasons. Has any L1s, L2s reached out to you to launch a purpose market yet?
No, not L1s or L2s yet. Some other projects have. Um, I think the incentive is pretty clear for them. It's like, okay, we can either pay for a listing on a centralized exchange, or maybe they don't care as much about a derivative market, but nevertheless, like it can bring demand and eyeballs and volume towards their token in some indirect way. But why not own a piece of that, right? So I do think that's also a valid use case.
And will this expand into like pre-markets in the future as well, not just like regular markets? Is that something that you've thought about?
Not really. I mean, we have like a category that internally we're excited about, but yeah, we're just like waiting for everybody else to surprise us with whatever ideas they have. And you know, that is it's been cool. We've been having, multiple calls a day. I will get the application. I'll read through it. I'm like, I don't know, but then some of these teams will genuinely surprise us. Um, so it's been a fun process.
Awesome. I mean, I have my own thoughts on pre-markets. I always felt like they always get abused in some way, and I think many have voiced that even though they're, the price discovery aspect is cool and stuff, but they have their own problems. But yeah, it's always demand and supply, right? One thing I wanted to ask you, right? Like Hyperliquid has not been around for a long time, but they have done so many things. And recent Jeff interview was kind of, cool to see of whole the journey and stuff, and where Hyperliquid is at this point. They're making big waves in the US soon, and with their own policy center and whatnot. How is, what do you think about like the broader ecosystem? And I think Jeff mentioned it yesterday, where when someone builds on top of Hyperliquid, they benefit and others benefit from them as well. So they have that kind of awesome relationship. Are you seeing that already? And what do you think about the ecosystem? Even I still think it's super early in terms of the ecosystem, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's impossible to ignore at this point. There was chatter for a long time around like, oh, was Hyper EVM a success or not? Um, I could see arguments in both ways. I think I've always felt that Hypercore was kind of the main primitive, but there's certainly standouts on Hyper EVM, like something like Kinetiq, of course. But I never really viewed this whole experiment as um, something that would play out like other L1 ecosystems. But I think when HIP-3 first came around, having spoken to a lot of like funds and stuff during that time, there was a lot of like uncertainty around, I don't know, will this work? Why doesn't Hyperliquid just do this all themselves? But I think this whole approach has been validated abundantly. I mean, we're seeing open interest all-time highs like on a weekly basis. The competition is really high. Um, and I think there's really good quality because of it. And the only other way that the Hyperliquid team, as cracked as they are, could have, had done this outcome and then parlay that into HIP 4 and then, whatever HIP 5 and HIP 6 will be, is really just scaling their team. Um, and I don't think that they want to do that per se. So I think this just whole ambition of like the house of all finance definitely requires a village. And there's a lot of like philosophical debates around like horizontal versus vertical. I think there's merit to both, but for now, this horizontal approach is definitely working.
Awesome. I think everyone is waiting to for us to ask you this question. When launch?
Yeah. Connecticut's in some audits now, so we're waiting for that to clear up. But in a perfect world, stake is live in maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and markets very soon after that. Um, Again, we're working towards curating the first 10 launches because there's incentives for the tickers. So the first 3 are free, the next 7 are a fixed price. Um, so yeah, we're working on highly curated 10 launches. We have maybe a couple teams that we're like especially interested in right now. But yeah, as we get closer, we'll start kind of revealing what that will look like.
Awesome. As the last question of the day, Parker, do you have like any advice for any applications that are coming in? Like, what is the team looking more at, looking less at? Like, what makes the application more favorable?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of touched on it, but I think from our perspective, the two biggest roles for any sub deployer is attention and some operational, uh, you know, ability, especially on the liquidity side of things. We have a network of market makers that we talk to and are really interested to see, the pipeline of sub deployers that come through, and where interests a lot collide, they collide. But nevertheless, like, um, you know, we view sub deployers as, somewhat like self-sovereign to some degree, and yeah.
Awesome. All right, Parker, we're gonna have to get you on closer to launch as well. I think as we get each deployment on, we'll just get you on each time to sort of talk about, the thought process, every time volume, and all that. Thank you so much for the time. And yeah, very excited to see this launch.
Thank you,
No,
sir.
thanks for having me. Definitely keen to come back.